What if the smoothest song on American radio was recorded under protest? 3 failed attempts, the lead singer furious, the band fracturing in real time. Reminiscing played over 5 million times. Frank Sinatra called it one of the best songs of the 70s. Yet the man who sang it said he was drowning, and a guitarist who joined after the hits were made ended up owning the name in a court of law. This is the real story of how one song changed Little River Band forever. Melbourne, Australia, 1975. 5 musicians gathered with a singular, almost desperate ambition to crack the American market. They were not young dreamers chasing their first break. They were veterans, men who had already paid dues in bands that came close but never quite broke through. Glenn Shorak had fronted the Twilights and Axiom, bands that found genuine success on the Australian circuit but never made the leap to international recognition. Beeb Birtles and Graham Goebel had worked through the pop outfit Mississippi. Derek Pellicci kept time behind all of them at various points. These were craftsmen, not rookies, and they all understood one painful truth. The Australian music market had a ceiling. To truly make it, you had to leave. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Their manager was Glenn Wheatley, former bass player for the Masters Apprentices. A man with a vision as precise and uncompromising as anything the band would ever record. Wheatley had watched Australian acts get swallowed whole by the London music machine. Talented bands that arrived in England, got chewed up by an indifferent industry, and returned home with nothing but debt and disappointment. He had no intention of repeating that mistake. His plan was direct: bypass Britain entirely and take aim at the United States from the very beginning. America was the market that mattered. Everything else was a distraction. The band needed a name. It arrived without ceremony. Shorak and Birtles were driving down the Princes Highway near Melbourne when they passed a road sign for the township of Little River. The name stuck. Humble in origin, quietly confident in character. The Australian press quickly began describing them as a supergroup, given the collective pedigree of their members, and that description carried its own kind of pressure from the start. Their early sound was built to compete, a blend of rock, pop, and tight vocal harmonies that drew obvious comparisons to the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac. It's a Long Way There reached number 28 on the Billboard chart in 1976. Help Is On Its Way climbed to number 14 in 1977. These were not flukes. These were calculated strikes from a band that had done its homework and knew exactly what it was aiming at. But beneath the harmony and the careful construction, a quiet tension already existed. 3 men, Shorak, Birtles, and Goebel, each carried their own vision of what this band should sound like. Shorak was a natural performer with a soulful, emotionally direct vocal style. Birtles brought high harmonies and pop instincts shaped by years in the Australian commercial scene. Goebel was something different altogether, analytically minded, with jazz influences that stretched well outside the standard rock playbook. For now, those visions coexisted, held together by ambition and the shared goal of breaking America. The fracture had not yet opened, but it was already there, waiting. April 1977. The band had just finished a television appearance when Graham Goebel picked up his Martin acoustic guitar and felt something move through him. What came next took roughly 30 minutes. A melody, a lyric, a feeling soaked in the old Hollywood romanticism of 1930s and 40s, cinema that evoked images of Glenn Miller, a big band warmth, and the idea of 2 people sitting together and remembering the way things used to be. Goebel later described the experience as almost like a spiritual download that just flowed through me. The melody and the lyric arrived almost simultaneously. What made the song unusual, even dangerous by pop standards, was its sophistication. It utilized a C9 jazz chord, the kind of voicing more at home in a supper club than on FM rock radio. It moved through complex key changes that most rock bands of the era would have avoided entirely. Goebel acknowledged it himself: "I had this very different song, with key changes and quite a lot of jazz chords, quite a sophisticated piece. The song was rooted in nostalgia by design. Its lyrical world was the early to mid-20th century, the big band era, the particular emotional texture of a time before rock and roll, before the world accelerated into the version of itself. that Goebel and his bandmates now inhabited. It was a deliberate reach backward, a love letter to sounds that predated his own musical education.
Wanna make you understand, talking about a lifetime.
But sophistication is not always welcome in a band with competing visions. When Goebel brought Reminiscing to the group, the reaction was divided. Some recognized its commercial potential immediately. Others were far less certain. Glenn Shorak, the voice that would ultimately carry the song to millions, was among the skeptical. The recording process became a battle of wills. The band tried the song more than once before it finally clicked on the third attempt, after keyboardist Peter Jones was brought in to play the parts that unlocked the track's full emotional character. Goebel recalled that this third attempt proceeded under protest from some of the guys, mainly from Glenn Shorak. What sounded effortless to millions of eventual listeners had been extracted through friction, stubbornness, and an internal argument that quietly revealed the fault line running through the center of the band. Reminiscing was finished. And it was perfect. The only question was what that perfection was going to cost them. When record executives first heard the completed Sleeper Catcher album, the response was not encouraging. They listened through the tracks and told the band plainly that they could not hear a clear single. The band left that meeting without a release date, and without much hope that the album would find the American audience they had spent years building toward. 5 weeks later, a New York executive called with a different verdict. "You're all crazy. Reminiscing is a smash." He was right. The song climbed the Billboard Hot 100 and peaked at number 3 in 1978, the highest American chart position the band had ever achieved. It was later recognized with a 5 million Air Award, placing it among the most played songs of its era on American radio. John Lennon, according to his companion May Pang, reportedly played it again and again in his New York apartment. Frank Sinatra was also said to have praised it as one of the standout songs of the decade. Glenn Frey of the Eagles, the very band that Little River Band had modeled their sound against, publicly called them the best singing band in the world. For the men in the band, this was the validation they had worked toward for years, across continents and career restarts. Between 1977 and 1982, Little River Band became one of the most successful American touring and recording acts to emerge from Australia, with a run of major US hits that kept them in constant rotation on radio and in the charts. Albums followed albums. First Under the Wire broke into the top 10 of the Billboard 200. Lonesome Loser and Cool Change became radio staples, songs that felt like they had always existed, like they belonged to the soundtrack of late nights and long drives. The machine was running, and the momentum was extraordinary. But momentum is a deceptive force. It carries you forward whether you want to go or not, and it does not ask permission. The label knew what it wanted from Little River Band. Radio programmers knew what they wanted. Audiences had voted with their purchases and their dial settings, and what all of them wanted was Reminiscing. Not the rocky, harmony-driven ambition of the early years, not the balanced creative tension between 3 distinct songwriting voices, just that sound, that smooth, nostalgic, emotionally precise sound that Goebel had produced in 30 minutes on an acoustic guitar. The trap had closed. It just did not look like a trap yet. Success, when it arrives in that particular form, overwhelming, externally defined, commercially absolute, has a way of hollowing out the thing it appears to celebrate. For Little River Band, the hollow space opens slowly between recording sessions, during the long stretches of touring, in the moments when Glenn Shorak stood at a microphone and sang words and performed visions that were not entirely his own. The phrase Shorak used to describe this period was stark. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of compromise. Critics had begun calling the band's polished American sound Little River Bland. The description stung because it carried an uncomfortable grain of truth. The raw edge of Australian pub rock, the sweat and spontaneity of a band finding its identity in real time, had been replaced by something meticulous, smooth, and carefully calibrated for maximum acceptability. Graham Goebel's analytical nature, the very quality that had produced the harmonic sophistication of Reminiscing, became a source of daily friction. Shorak later described the experience as like having a policeman on stage with you every night. Goebel acknowledged the tension directly, admitting his approach drove Glenn completely mental. The two men were not enemies, but they had become fundamentally incompatible visions of the same band, occupying the same stage and the same studio, and growing, over time, profoundly unable to reconcile.
That it's time for a cool change.
Shorak channeled his frustration into his own music. In 1979, he wrote Cool Change, a man staring at open water and longing for space, for quiet, for release from something suffocating. The lyric was personal in ways that went beyond the metaphor. It was a plea from a man who was still showing up, still delivering everything the audience expected, but who was running out of the internal resource that made it possible to keep doing so. The song became another massive hit. The irony was not subtle, and it was not lost on Shorak. Recording sessions for albums like Diamantina Cocktail grew tense enough that members began working separately, scheduling studio time to minimize friction. Songwriting politics sharpened. Shorak felt pushed toward material carrying religious overtones that reflected Goebel's spiritual perspective in ways foreign to his own instincts. The shared creative ownership that had defined the band in 1975 was eroding, one album and one compromise at a time. By early 1982, Glenn Shorak had reached the end of what he could sustain. He approached the band with what he believed was a reasonable request, a year away. Time to record a solo album. Time to recover his sense of himself as a musician outside the machine Little River Band had become. He was not asking to leave permanently, he was asking for space. The answer, delivered in a meeting Shorak later recalled with barely concealed bitterness, was effectively no. The band would not wait. The momentum would not pause. They would continue without him. Graham Goebel explained the decision with clinical precision. Glenn couldn't sing the songs that I was writing, that John could sing. I had a different vision. The replacement was John Farnham, one of the most celebrated vocalists in Australian music history, managed by the same Glenn Wheatley who had built Little River Band from the ground up. From a commercial standpoint, the logic was defensible. Farnham could serve Goebel's evolving compositional direction in ways that Shorak increasingly could not or would not. From a human standpoint, Shorak found the situation devastating, a betrayal dressed in the language of creative necessity. It wasn't all bells and whistles, he said years later, in the measured tone of a man who had learned to live with a wound that had never fully closed. I didn't want to leave, really. I just wanted to relax. But no, they didn't want that. Farnham himself never entirely settled into the role. He later admitted feeling uneasy about the transition, sensing that the classic lineup's chemistry was something he had inherited rather than earned. The band continued producing solid work. The Net and No Rains both contained strong material, but the top 10 American chart dominance of the Shorak years never returned. The departure of Shorak was the moment the original story ended. What followed was the story of a brand, still capable of making music, still carrying the name, but no longer animated by the founding tension between three distinct creative personalities who needed each other to produce what none of them could produce alone. The original Little River Band had been, at its core, a productive argument. When Shorak left, the argument was over. And in rock and roll, when the argument ends, something vital tends to go with it. The years that followed Shorak's departure were marked by a slow legal disintegration that unfolded largely out of public sight, in corporate documents and shareholder agreements, and the fine print of contracts that musicians typically leave to managers and lawyers. Most fans never saw it coming. Most fans never knew it happened at all. The holding company established to manage the band's rights quietly accumulated a significance that none of the founding members had fully anticipated. One by one, Goebel, Shorak, Bertels, and drummer Derek Palici left the company structure. Their departures came through personal decisions, creative disputes, and what some involved described simply as clumsy paperwork. The net effect was the same. By the late 1990s, guitarist Stephen Houston, who had joined in 1981, found himself as the sole controller of the Little River Band trademark through the company structure. The Federal Court of Australia addressed the dispute in 2002. The ruling and settlement confirmed that the original members could not use the Little River Band name in the manner they wanted for touring or promotion. They could not call themselves the original Little River Band. They could not call themselves the voices of Little River Band. Goebel described the loss with controlled fury. Their identity and history had been hijacked. He wrote a song called "Someone's Taken Our History," a title that required no further explanation. B. Birtles was more direct. "I hate to tell them," he said of the current touring lineup, "but it was all over when I quit." The band that continued touring America under the Little River Band name contained no one who had played on Reminiscing, no one who had been in the room during those 3 difficult recording sessions, no one who had lived the story that the audience came to celebrate. In 2004, Little River Band was inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame, the Australian Recording Industry Association's highest honor. For one night, the classic lineup gathered on the same stage: Shorak, Birtles, Goebel, Polici. The men who had started it in Melbourne in 1975 aimed their ambitions at America and hit the target squarely. The men who had recorded one of the most played songs in the history of FM radio then watched the machine they built turn against them. It was, by most accounts, the last time the original members performed together. The wounds never healed. In 2015, when the current version of Little River Band, led by bass player Wayne Nelson, who had joined in 1980, was scheduled to appear on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, the original members protested publicly. Shorak wrote what he called a strong letter, expressing his distress at the continued promotion of the band name in a way he felt misrepresented the group's legacy to American audiences. The appearance did not happen. Nelson defended the band's continuity with equal conviction, describing Little River Band as an evolving process and maintaining that the original members had signed away their rights knowingly. 2 sides of the same story, each one true from inside its own experience, neither one able to reach across to the other. Reminiscing itself remained untouchable by any of this. The song collected a 5 million Air Award. It stayed in rotation on adult contemporary and classic hit stations year after year, decade after decade, with a persistence that most pop songs never achieve. Listeners who had first heard it in 1978, young men in parked cars or apartments, at that particular moment of early adulthood, when certain songs attached themselves to you permanently, still heard it decades later and still felt the same thing. Warmth, recognition, the particular ache of a memory that stays beautiful even when everything around it has changed. The band that created it was fractured beyond repair. The song itself was as intact as the day Goebel pulled it from the air in 30 minutes with a Martin acoustic guitar in his hands. He had written it as a meditation on cherished memories and the weight of time that passes. It became, without his intending it, the most precise description of its own legacy that a song has ever produced. Some things outlive everything. This one did. Little River Band chased the American dream and caught it, then watched it pull the band apart from the inside. Reminiscing made them immortal, but the price was paid in creative compromise, broken friendships, and a legal exile that stripped the founders from their own name. The song endures. The original band does not. What's your memory of hearing Reminiscing for the first time? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from rock's greatest era.